go into our second parsha of Sefer Bamidbar, Parshat Naso, which continues with some of the things we started with last week. We talked about the Levites. We had the census. The groups of Levites were counted, and we continue now with the families of the Levites are broken up into three different families: Gershom, Kahatu, Merari. The family of Kahat is the family of which Moshe and Aaron were part of, and they are considered the creme de la creme, if you would, the cream of the crop. Aaron is from them, Moshe is from them. They carry, therefore, the most sacred vessel, the Aaron, as it went through the ark. As opposed to them, the family of Gershon is right. It's counted separately. We have the separate counting of the different, but they're given a crucial task as well, carrying the curtains, the coverings, the fabrics of the Mishkan. And there's a lovely idea I think we can derive from there, which is that kedusha, sanctity, holiness, is not only what's in the dramatic center. It's not only the ark, the aron. Somebody has to carry the structure itself. The aron may symbolize the inspiration, but the curtains create the sacred space. And our religion insists that quiet infrastructure matters as much as visible as visible greatness. So we think about the inspirational teacher and whatnot, but we have to also remember sort of the administrator, or maybe sometimes these days it would be the computer system, the person who made the computer system, which allows for the organization and for the structure. Without that, there's no Mishkan to house the holiness. So that's something about the family of Gershom. We have a third family. We talked about Gahad, we talked about Gershom. We go on and we talked about the family now of Merari as we continue in Parshat Naso. We're in the fourth chapter of the book of Bamidbar. And the family of Merari, they must have been the weightlifters of the different tribes, because they carried of the tribe of Levi, I should say, they carried the heaviest parts, the beams, the sockets, the poles, pillars even. And not everybody we know carries the same type of burden. And the Merari family, they sort of represents this idea of endurance, of consistency, of practical responsibility, the ability to bear weight over time. So right there, carrying in one sense the heaviest load, the beams, similar to the others, the family of Gershom, who carries the curtain, but everybody is contributing in different ways. They are carrying. Continue into the early parts of the next chapter, Parak Hay. Let me just scroll up a second to get back to the wording so I can lead you. The Parshat Bamidbar goes into the middle of the fourth chapter of the book of Bamidbar, and then that's where it has sort of the second and third families of the Levites. And then in chapter 5, we have a command coming to Moshe. To instruct Bnei Israel to remove from the camp anyone with a discharge, or anybody defiled, or mizachar nekeva, male or female, tishluchu el michutz lamachane tishalchum, send them out of the camp, whether male or female, v'lo yitamu et machaneim asher anochi shochein b'tocham, and they should not defile the camp that God says, that I dwell in. And Bnei Israel do that. They send outside of the camp as God had commanded them to do. And in some ways it sounds harsh, where those who are impure are temporarily sent outside the camp. Most famous person sent outside the camp, of course, later on, Sefer Bamidbar, is Miriam, after she speaks Lashon Hara and comes down with Tzara'at. But this is something we see generally in Jewish life, that holiness requires distinctions, boundaries, naming something what it is. The first bracha we say early on in the morning, Anotein l'sakvi vina lavchin ben yom uvayin laila. God who gives the rooster the wisdom to distinguish between day and night. We have to be able to distinguish things. What is holy? What is not holy? What is good? What is bad? So, right, if we have a camp without boundaries, it ceases to be a camp. A sacred camp without sort of standards ceases to be sacred. Right? Think about all the discussions in America, borders, border walls, this, that, or the other thing. Wherever you fall out within the political climate of the border with Mexico, obviously there's some, but the great majority of Americans all believe there needs to be some sort of border. There needs to be some sort of border security. What's right, what's not right, how it is to be done, how it is administered, et cetera, how much money should be. Those are all questions, but everybody agrees that there needs to be some sort of boundary. And so, right, I guess, if we want to think about it, putting together different things, part of the question is, how does a society balance compassion with the necessity of a boundary, of a border? How do we maintain our integrity or spiritual identity, if you want to talk about this with Bnei Yisrael, but at the same time being open and welcoming? And right, if we think about what's being said here in the Torah, it's not that impurity is evil. And exclusion here, people are being kicked out, but it's only temporary. So they're allowed back in if they go through the proper procedures, but boundaries still matter. It still is important to understand different boundaries, different borders, and what would allow for crossing and when people come in and out, et cetera, et cetera. So more questions, hopefully, than answers, but at least something to think about. So we can continue on, excuse me, into the very same chapter. Is we then have questions about people who commit wrongdoings. This is from Pasuk Vav. Daber al bnei Yisrael isho isha ki asu b'kol chatot adam lemol ma'al b'Hashem v'shma hanefesh hahi. When a man or woman has committed any wrong towards their fellow human being, breaking faith with God, and they realize that they did something wrong, visvadu et chatatam asher asu. What happens is they have to confess for the sin which they did. Ve'shiv et ashamo barosho v'chamishito yosef alav natan lasher asham lo. So they have to confess and they have to pay back the amount and also add 20% to the one who they wronged. And it continues, V'im la'ish goel la'shiva hasham elav hasham mushav la'sham la'kohen milvad el ha'kipurim asher chaper alav. If the parties deceased, meaning I wronged somebody and they are no longer with us and they have no descendants to whom the restitution can be paid for, then the amount goes to God. Right? It goes to the temple in addition to the sacrifice. Torah here, right, requires not only repayment for theft, but something it requires in addition to repayment, in addition to the 20%, is a confession and a verbal confession. V'hitvadu et chatatam. This word vitvadu, we know the idea of vidui, confession by Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. And Yom Kippur, we have it many, many times in the davening. Right? We have to confess. A person has to confess their sins, and this is one of the earliest sources of the idea of confession, and something that's significant here and is important. I think it's true. Torah is saying it, and I think it's very much true in life. It's not just repaying and even adding the 20%. That may technically undo the wrongdoing that you did for another, but merely the financial restitution does not rectify, if I'm the sinner, does not rectify my sins. Right? There is still some spiritual damage that remain. Yes, I paid it back, but I can return the money and I can still avoid the truth. Confession is the vidui is supposed to force me to say this and thus to think about it. It's the idea, just generally in Jewish life, that sin, it distorts the self. Not only what it does to the external world, what I did to you by causing damage to you, but what it does to me. And of course, we said this is very important when we think about Yom Kippur, when we think about the laws of tshuva and the importance of speaking the moral repair that I need to do for myself, not just technically what I have to pay back and what penalties to make wrong for what I did wrong. It's not enough to fix the damage. Part of that damage is also to myself. Okay, now let's get into one more one more idea that we have here. We move from right. We're talking about this restitution and this carbon asham for somebody who has sinned, and then we talk about in the last pasuk what happens if somebody is unable to technically pay the person back because that person has passed away and they have no living relative. So then we talk about how then it goes to God, it goes to the Kohanim, and then we sort of take an aside here, and this is from Hey Tet pasuk chapter 5, verse 9, excuse me. So to any gift amongst the sacred donations, a truma, will go to the Kohanim, Vishet Kadashav, Lo Yiyu, Ish Asher Yitain LaKohen, Lo Yiyah. And each shall retain his sacred donation. Each priest shall keep that which is given to him. So, right, you give it to a Kohen, it goes to that Kohen. But the verse makes it sound like it remains the person's. Right? Again, let me read you the words of the verse. Vishe kadoshav lo yihiyu, and each shall retain his sacred donation. So you keep your donation, but it goes to the the Kohen, and seemingly, and again, there are different ways of reading this verse, but the way that I'm understanding this verse is, I gave a donation to the Kohen, it goes to the Kohen, but it means to sound like it's still mine. And maybe what it's trying to say is that when I donate something for a higher purpose, when I take some of my hard-earned money, you take some of your hard-earned money and you donate it to a higher purpose, in a sense, that becomes that object, that money, finally is fulfilling its fullest possible purpose, and thus it is, in a sense, more truly mine than it ever was before. Material possessions are temporary. And we think about generosity. Tzedakah, kedusha is something that remains long after a person's life. It has, right, the same way you sinned, and the effects are still there until you do the vidoy. When you do a mitzvah, the stain is the wrong word. The scent, we'll call it. Scent sounds better than a stain. The scent remains. The goodness remains for a long, long time. And so, Ishet kedoshav lo yiyah, a man's sacred things, a person's sacred things shall be his. It's no longer mine. I gave it to the Kohen. But what we're, in a sense, we're doing here, one could understand it as sort of we're redefining ownership. That what I give away in doing an act of sanctity, in doing an act of kedusha, that in the end is what's going to remain of mine more than all of the, I don't know, the 5,000 baseball caps that I've bought during my lifetime, or I'm looking at a baseball hat, I don't think I bought 5,000 of them sitting in front of me on a chair, or the clothing that I bought, or the furniture that I bought, etc., etc. That is what I deeply own more than anything else. It's not my worldly possessions. It is the spiritual things. It is the tzedakah. It is the acts of goodness. Those remain even more so for me, and hopefully for others as well, for a very long time. We'll say ad lenetzach letzachim, something that remains forever.